Hello, I am here with Amy, and we are going to jump right in today. And Amy, before we hear your whole story, I always ask at these podcasts, like, what's a why not today moment in your life where you made a decision, you remember where you were and your life took a complete pivot and change. So we're going to start there today. So Amy, welcome. And what's your why not today moment?
Yeah, thank you so much. I'm excited to be here. I actually have several why not today moments that I will share with you. The most profound, it does require a trigger warning because it does include suicidal thoughts.
Oh,
But I was completely incapacitated for almost a year, and the doctors couldn't figure out what was wrong with me. And so I decided that instead of being a burden to my family, it would be better if I just wasn't alive.
oh,
And I
wow.
knew that I had enough pain medication to make it happen. So I decided that I was going to put myself and my family out of my misery, out of our misery. And I was going to swallow that handful of pills. But my heart said to me, what if you don't have to die? What if you can make a different choice? What if you can take the same energy you're using trying to die and you flip it around and you use it to fight to live? Maybe you can get better and use your story to help others. And so it was that moment. I remember laying in that bed. It brings me to tears,
Mm.
struggling with the desire to be released of this burden and this pain and all of this suffering that I was going through, but also the thought of maybe being able to use what I was going through to help other people, because I'm a former educator and social worker, and that was my heart. And it was that desire, that pull between the two, and I chose to fight to live so I could use my story to help others. And
Wow.
that's the most profound why not moment that I have to share with you today.
Love that. And not love that you're in that situation, but that you had this foresight to say, I can make a difference and impact. And that's really what Why Not Today is about. Like making those
Yeah,
daily choices. And I often say, sometimes people's Why Not Today moment isn't profound, it's getting out of bed. And
exactly.
so you were able to take that for good. Obviously, you were not successful in the other endeavor, and here you are, and huge success. So, I always talk about in podcasts where I met somebody because I think connections are kind of fun, and we really met just on Facebook and just connected there. We had a call, love what you're doing, and it just kind of dovetails so well with the Why Not Today message. So, Amy, before we dive into your story and obviously your success with all this, what does courage mean to you?
Oh man, courage. There's so many ways you can look at it, but to me personally, it means accepting who you are authentically. Just understanding who you came here to be before the world told you who you were supposed to be, and accepting that version of yourself as authentically you, owning it and living it out in your life. That takes great courage to do that. It's not easy, but man, it's so freeing and it's definitely worth it.
And it's kind of the conversation I've been having with a lot of people that always say that those of us that are over 12, we've lived a little bit of life. But
Yes.
how can we take that message and share it with kids just getting out of college or in college or starting their jobs? If they had those and that in their tool belt, hopefully they do, but I kind of
Yeah.
doubt everybody does. And I think especially the kids these days coming out of school with everything that's happened since 2020, but that just that authentic piece, and especially with social media, so powerful these days,
Mhm.
people try to be who they aren't.
Yes.
And when you walk into that authentic you, you're so much more powerful and you're making such a difference.
It's so true. And that's one of the reasons that I live authentically. On my socials, I live authentically. I put it all out there, the good, bad, the ugly. And that's what people are craving. I have shared some things that people have been shocked to know about me, but it's because I'm being authentically me and that's part of me. And it doesn't mean everybody has to do what I'm doing. It just
Right.
means that this is the way that I'm embracing and owning my authenticity. And I do go to schools and universities and talk about this and spread this message and share my framework because it is so powerful and I've seen it work in my life and make a difference. And it's really what the world needs. It truly is right
Oh,
now.
absolutely. And that's, one of the reasons with the podcast is I don't edit these episodes and I don't want to
Yeah.
because I want them to be authentic. I want people to hear our ums and our ups and
Yeah.
our fumbles over the words, and it might not be perfect. The other day, I mean, I've been doing this. I mean, I have over 150 episodes, and I recorded an episode. I completely forgot to plug in my microphone. I mean, I had my computer mic, but I'm like, you know what? I'm not redoing it. It's not
Right.
going to be perfect. It's going to be what it needs to be.
Exactly.
And you never know who's going to listen and they need to exactly hear that. All right. So
Yes.
obviously with your story, your why not today moment, you got out of bed and you've made a difference. So let's talk about how you made that work. First of all, how did you end up in bed incapacitated? And I'm
I
sure that's
was,
part of your story.
yeah, I was working at the University of Oklahoma one day, and one night I felt sick and I got up to take some medicine and I ended up passing out and I landed on my face on the hardwood floor.
Oh,
And 6 months later, I found out that the impact from that fall had sheared my brainstem,
oh
caused a
my God.
traumatic brain injury, and broke my neck. So I was living with a broken neck, a sheared brainstem, all of that for 6 months
And
before
still
anyone ever
functioning?
figured out. No, I was incapacitated.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So I was working at OU one day, and the next day I couldn't even take myself to the restroom,
Oh,
but
wow.
nobody could figure out why. And so I laid in that bed and just, it really, really went downhill. But I advocated for myself. It was my fourth neurologist who figured out that my neck was broken because I just kept going to neurologists and neurologists, you're helping me, but you're not figuring out what's wrong with me. I'm going to try a different one. And, this is why I wrote a whole book about it, because the story is so extensive of all of the things that I went through and the way I advocated for myself and
Well, and I
all
think
of the things that I went through.
that's such a powerful message in itself that we have to fight for our own self. I had somebody on my
Yes.
podcast whose daughter like went from playing soccer to barely being able to walk and no reason why. And the doctor said, oh, it's just a teenager, it's just in her head. But she fought and fought and fought and finally found out what it was, which was something very rare. But just goes to tell
Mm,
you, you've got to be an advocate for yourself.
absolutely. Yes, because if you're not, who's going to?
Right. Yeah. So, all right, back to your story. So you got some help?
So I was incapacitated for almost a year.
Oh,
Went
wow.
through that experience that I talked about earlier, where I almost swallowed a handful of pills. And because I'm a former educator and social worker, I came here to help people. That's my purpose on this earth, is to help people. And I was not able to do that, laying in bed with a cover over my eyes, earplugs in my ear, barely able to speak above a whisper. I lost that entire year of my children's lives. My daughter was a senior in high school, my son was a freshman, and my youngest son was 4 years old. And I
Oh my
lost that
goodness.
entire year of their lives. I lost my job. I lost my sense of self worth, because that's where I got my sense of self worth by how much I could
Yeah.
accomplish. And then in the process, I almost lost myself. But like I said, I decided to fight to live, to use my story to help others. And while it wasn't, excuse me, didn't happen overnight. It took a process of really leaning into this and deciding to trust myself and believe in myself and decide to get better. I did, and I lived 10 years with a broken neck. My neck stayed broken for 10 years,
Oh my
and just
goodness.
advocating for myself and pushing through. And it has, so then I wrote a book about it because people began watching me fight my way through the medical and the disability systems. And they began saying, "You're such an inspiration. You need to share your story with other people. Hey, why don't you write a book about it? That would be a good way to help people." And I was like, I'm literally clawing my way out of hell right now. I don't want to document this.
Right.
But they kept insisting. And so I did. I wrote my first book called Finding My Hero Within, and in 2 days, it became a bestseller, and it took on a life of its own, a
Wow.
life that I was not prepared for. All kinds of cool things it has led to.
That's awesome. So, you've written more books since that one?
Yes. Yeah, I have two that are bestsellers. I have two that are out, and a third one that is, I have a book in me constantly. There's constantly another book in me, so I'm working on a third one as we speak. Yeah.
That's awesome. That's on my list, not right away though. One day
Yeah,
I'll
it's
get
totally
there.
doable. Totally doable. I think everyone should write
Yeah.
a book. Literally.
You know
It's
what? And I've had a lot of people say that and write a book, have a podcast, start a business because somebody shared this one day. Like if one person you can make a difference and your story makes a difference in one person's life, then you know what? It's worth it. If you can change somebody's life. With the podcast, I ran into some girl one day who my sister worked with, and she introduced me. She goes, "Oh my gosh, you're the one with the podcast. I've listened to it." And she was probably in her 20s and she was commuting an hour and a half each day and listened to my podcast, encouraged her to look for another job, got a job close to home, and she didn't have to commute anymore. So, you hear those
Wow.
stories, it's like, it may not seem that big, but it's big for her life and made a difference, and we can make a
Oh,
difference.
absolutely. Multiple readers have told me that my book literally saved their life, that they were on
Wow,
the verge of ending their life. And because of my story, they chose to make a different choice, just like I did. And to think that I almost didn't write that book, I almost didn't put that
yeah,
out into the world, but that several people are alive today because of my words is
that's
so
awesome.
humbling. It's so
Yeah.
humbling.
And that's where
And
I feel like I was going to say the why not today message, as I said earlier, like getting out of bed. And I did have somebody buy a why not today t-shirt and cup for her daughter who was in college and struggling, just to encourage her. Um, that, yeah, we don't know. So you did the
yeah.
book, and then did you have the business before the book, or did you add a business, or what are you doing now? Let's talk about your evolution of how you got there.
Yeah, sure. So I did have the business before the book because
Okay.
my business is called Polish the Mirror.
I love that.
And when I was laying in that bed incapacitated, I could literally do nothing that I could before the accident. And I was just trying to find something I could do. And I decided that the one thing I could do was to put in earphones, turn them down really, really low, and listen, have someone load up podcasts and audiobooks, uplifting. And so I began listening to Tony Robbins, Dr. Wayne Dyer. I came across the wisdom of Rumi during this time. And it was this poem that made the difference in my life and encouraged me to create my business. It goes, "Ye who seek God apart, that which you seek thou art. If you wish to seek the beloved's face, polish the mirror and gaze into that space."
Oh,
And
wow.
that told me that every answer I seek can be found within, that I'm looking in the wrong place for all the answers. This
Isn't that
hero that
so
I'm
true?
waiting, this knight in shining armor that I'm waiting to come rescue me from this miserable existence, it's found in my reflection in the mirror. And so I began to shift my focus and my mindset and focus on going inward and looking inside instead of looking for all the answers outside. I began looking inside, and that
Mhm.
changed my whole life. I began to learn to be authentic and embrace who I am, not who I was taught to be or expected to be. And that began to shift. And then I wrote the book and it became a bestseller. And then I was on a Times Square billboard and I went to the Emmys and I did all of these
Oh,
things
wow.
that I just kept saying. I mean, people were calling with all of these opportunities and I just kept saying yes, yes, yes. But it became overwhelming. It became a life that I was not prepared for. I didn't have the capacity to receive that much success in that short period of time. And it sent me into another deep, dark place that I don't know if you want me to go into that or not, but
Sure. I'll often say, be careful what you pray for. Sometimes you get it and you have no
yeah.
idea how big it can be.
Yeah, it's the dark side of success. That's what I
And
like to
that's
say.
Yeah, and I definitely want you to go there because I
Yeah.
really kind of pivoted the podcast in the last couple months. That I want to talk about the not so great things because we talk about, all right, you wrote a book, became a bestseller, you did all these amazing things, and it looks like, oh, you've arrived, and there was no ups and downs. But I don't care how successful you are, you had ups and downs, but we don't talk about those. And I really hope this gives people permission and hope that, you know what, that's okay. We're not alone. We try to do it in isolation, but to be able to hear other people's stories that, you know what, it happens to other people. So yeah, let's hear it.
Absolutely. I was featured in an article with Mel Robbins about resilience, and then in another article with Brene Brown about resilience. And so people began to refer to me as a celebrity
Oh,
because they
wow.
began seeing all of these cool things that I was doing, and they began saying, "Oh, you're such a celebrity." And I was like, "No, oh no, time out, time out. That's not what we're doing here. We're not. That's not what we want because." Fame and notoriety don't motivate me. I'm about people's hearts. I just want to help people. I don't want people to put me on a pedestal like that. So it really, really threw me into this weird place of, no, this is not what I'm doing. I'm not trying to be a celebrity. And so I began to fall apart behind the scenes. Like my mission and my book and my career was all based around being strong and resilient and pushing through and not giving up. Yet here I was falling apart behind the scenes because I didn't know how to handle this level of success. And I did it quietly and I did it alone because I was afraid to say anything. how would it impact my reputation? How would it impact my
Right.
career? If people knew I wasn't really resilient and I wasn't really strong, I was falling apart back here.
Yeah.
And thank goodness that I have a 15-year-old son who stays with me during the week and needs me to care for him, because it was my desire to care for him that allowed me to do one of the bravest, strongest things I have ever done in my life. And I walked myself into a mental health hospital and I asked for professional help.
Wow.
And they kept me for a week. And not because I was suicidal, but because I simply was not able to care for myself or my son. And that week in the mental health hospital, it not only changed my life, but it changed me. I live differently, I love differently, and I lead differently now after having that experience. And it was just a beautiful thing. And I began to talk about it openly on my socials, shocking a lot of people who this person who is so resilient was in a mental health hospital for a week. Yeah, it happens, but people are not talking about it. You're so right.
Yeah, we need to talk about it. And that's one of the things that I'm passionate about with this podcast, that, having a podcast is a voice and people listen
Yes.
to it. And one episode I had a good friend of mine, um, middle class or successful woman, business owner, kids in college and or high school. She had some mouth surgery and it got her addicted to opioids, and so bad that she had to go through detox, and it was terrible, and like lost a couple of years of her life because of that. And we don't talk about those hard things. You think, oh, that's not for me, or I don't know anybody, but you don't know who's next to you that's going through those things, that being able to share that. I'm so grateful that you're sharing that and giving people hope and permission, because it's not always
Yeah.
so easy.
Yeah, it's so true. I was afraid to share it at first. My soul told me as soon as I stepped out when I was released, before I got in my car, my soul said to me that you have to share this and you have to share it broadly and widely and openly. And I was like, oh, crap. I have to talk about this.
You want to do
But I began,
that?
right. So I took a picture of myself with just got out of the mental health hospital, no makeup, crazy hair, because that's how it is in a mental health hospital. And I posted that on my social media saying that I had just been released from mental health hospital. And I started this series called #authentically Amy, where I began sharing my story and my journey. And I began getting messages, crazy, crazy a number of messages, like out of the woodwork, people I hadn't heard from or didn't even know who they were, messaging me saying, thank you for talking about this. You don't know how many people you're helping. Nobody's talking about this. You're being so open about it. Keep talking about it. And most of them were from men. Men are afraid to talk about this because they're seen as weak. And they were messaging me over and over and over. And I came to realize that men truly want to be authentic and they want to own their authenticity, but we don't give them the opportunity to do that. And it was just amazing to me. And then I opened my LinkedIn one day, and this man that I had been chatting with about my experience, he was asking me questions behind the scenes, and I was just answering him, about my experience, made this public post thanking me, saying because I had shared this so openly that he made an appointment with the psychiatrist and was diagnosed with bipolar disorder, that he had
Oh,
lived with
wow.
this his whole life. He's an adult man. He had lived with this his whole life, but always wondered what was wrong with him. But now he knows, and he was encouraging other people to get the help that they need to. And it was just such a beautiful, it was came back around, full circle moment of look what happens when you give people permission to do this, to be authentic and to own who they really are. It's really, really powerful.
Yes, I think we need to do more of that. And two thoughts on that. But before we go there, I just wanted to interrupt our amazing conversation just to tell people listening, if you like what you're hearing, go and subscribe, please. It helps so other people can see this podcast, because I think people like Amy, their stories that can make a difference. So subscribe, review it. If you want more information about what we're doing with Why Not Today and the movement, then you can check it out on the Why Not Today movement.com website. And, this podcast each week, it's either me, a solo episode teaching something, or a guest that we coach through challenges beyond inspiration to teach you what actually works. So whether you're launching something new, navigating a pivot, you'll leave each episode with a clear next step and reminder that you're not alone. And so that's really why I'm doing this. And somebody told me recently it was a passion project and I should stop. I'm like, you know what? If I can touch one person, And do you know the story of the starfish?
Yes, but
Do you
yeah,
know?
go ahead.
So I live by that a lot. And I usually have a necklace, starfish necklace. I don't today, but the starfish story, some guy was walking down the beach, picking up starfish, throwing them in the ocean. And this man walked by and he's like, "What are you doing?" He's like, "I'm saving the starfish." He's like, "There's thousands. How can you make a difference?" And he picked one up and threw it in the water and said, "I made a difference with that one." And so I'm so passionate about that. Even on my website, you can get a starfish necklace, a starfish keychain, because I want people to just make a difference, one person at a time. And it's interesting when you're talking about being authentic and especially men. There was an article in, I think, the Washington Post during COVID with the owner, I think the Washington Capitals, and he owns several major sporting teams. And it was talking about people that are successful, people that are at the top. It's lonely. And he said, check on the leaders that COVID especially was a hard time. And but there's lots of things that are hard. And are we checking with the leaders, the people that seem like they have it all together? Like, oh, you don't need help. You're successful. And especially
Right.
the eldest children, which I am, everybody's like, oh, they're okay with this. But sometimes we need to check on those people and ask, are you okay? And I know I try to be attuned to and intuitive too. When somebody's on your mind, to send them a
Mhm.
text, to reach out, um, especially if they've gone through something hard, grief, to reach out later, that we can make such a
It,
difference with so many people.
it's so true, especially that intuition that we're given that for a reason. I just a quick example. One time, this friend came to mind. I hadn't spoken to her in, oh gosh, probably 10 years. And I thought, why am I thinking about her? Maybe I should call her. So I called her and she said, "How did you know?" And I said, "How did I know what?" She said, I just had a miscarriage. I haven't told anyone. How did you know?" And I said, "I didn't. I just had the urge to call you." And so you never know what people are going
Gives me
through and why
chills.
they come to
And
mind.
and I really talk about that. I did a whole episode on the scavenger hunt, the Why Not Today scavenger hunt, paying attention those people in front of you that you're supposed to connect with. And you're one of those people. Like we connected on Facebook and something you posted or something I saw, at the right moment. It's like, I want to know who this Amy person is, and I'm so glad I
Yeah.
did. And then, I consider you a friend. Like we're going to
Yeah,
stay connected. Um,
absolutely.
but paying attention to those things and not I always say listen to the first voice, not the second voice that talks you out of it.
Mm, I love that. That's
Because
so
you
good.
have that first voice, talk to that person or do this, and then you ignore it.
Mhm.
um but yeah, listen to that first voice, because you don't know whose life you're going to make a difference. So with your business, I always kind of ask these questions. What is one thing that you wish you would have known before you said, I'm going to start a business, or this crazy journey?
Oh goodness.
Or anything?
That yes, that not everybody wants to do the work that it takes to get the help that they need or the help that they want. Like, gosh, I deal a lot with emotions and obviously with authenticity. And while people say they want that, they really aren't willing to do the work that it takes to get them where they want to be.
That is so
And
true.
I didn't expect that.
Well, and then the other question I often ask, which I think you've answered this, is what are you so glad you didn't know, or you never would have started?
Oh, definitely the challenges that are involved and how dark success can be
Hmm.
when you're not prepared for it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so true. Yeah, as I said, be careful what you ask for. And I've watched this happen several times in my other career that I have in Mary Kay, that people came in really fast and really furious and hit records really fast. And you know what? You got to go through steps. You're not going to go A to Z right away. And so they did, but then they had to go back, and they were put on a pedestal so quickly that they didn't have the foundation, so they fell apart. So I think that's strong, a good message is we need to build that foundation. And I think we build the foundation by one success, another success, and a failure, and then a success and a fail, and I think I never really thought about it that way, but I think you got to go through the steps. Somebody recently said entrepreneurship is not A to Z, but A to B and B to C and C to D.
Mm,
You got to go through the steps, and it's the why not today
that's
moments and the why not today steps.
yeah, that's so good. And it reminds me of an analogy I use quite often. Both of my sons play video games, and they love for me to sit and watch them. And I will see them use these shortcuts and these things to go around the obstacles where
Mhm.
they're on this level, but they don't want to go through this obstacle. So they found a shortcut to go around the obstacle to get to the next level. But when they get to the next level, they don't know how to succeed there because they haven't gone through the obstacles in level one to get through the obstacles in the next level. So it is so true. We have to go through the obstacles in order to be able to get to where we want to be. Yeah.
Yeah, and I often say, and I shared this with somebody this morning, that John Maxwell teaches if you fall or you fail, you fall down, pick up the lesson with you and go forward,
Mm,
you
that's
know,
good.
and probably from where your business started to where you are now is nothing you could have ever imagined in the
Yeah.
journey. But it
Mhm.
was that one step. And I love that, incapacitated in bed, you're listening to positive stuff. And that's so important that we are filling our head with the right stuff
Yes.
because there's so much toxic stuff out there.
Mm, yeah.
So we could go on and on and on, but I love this conversation. May have to have you back again. So I will for sure link all your information in the show notes, how to access your books. What's the best place for people to find you, Amy?
My website is pretty much a one-stop shop. It's got all my social media contacts and books and interviews. It's got my press kit and all of that. It's www.getamyshelp.com.
Love that. Love the message too. So, well, thank you for being a guest and sharing your story. And thank you everybody for joining us on the Why Not Day podcast. And this is your space for practical tools, real encouragement, courageous growth. So hopefully today, I really hope to make courage contagious. And so if you want to know more about Why Not Today, it's whynotodaymovement.com. And this podcast is your bridge from inspiration to action. And I'm here with you to walk every step of the way. And so remember, take that one bold step, that daily action. So thanks, Amy.
Thank you, Leslie. It was an honor to be here.